He lived among them, a seemingly ordinary man, Dennis Rader, a husband, a father, a church council president, but beneath this veneer of normalcy hid a monster. Rader was the BTK Strangler, a name that struck terror into the heart of Wichita, Kansas for over 3 decades. He meticulously planned and executed the murders of 10 innocent souls, leaving their families and a community grappling with unimaginable grief and fear. This is the chilling story of how a seemingly ordinary life became a sinister spectacle of depravity. A tale of how a community was held captive by fear for years, and the relentless pursuit that brought a monster to justice. This is the story of Dennis Rader, the BTK killer. Dennis Lynn Rader was born in 1945 in Pittsburgh, Kansas. One of 4 sons, his early life seemed unremarkable. Yet even as a child, there were hints of darkness lurking beneath the surface. Accounts from former classmates described him as a quiet, unremarkable boy, prone to bouts of anger and cruelty to animals. He would torture stray animals, deriving a twisted pleasure from their suffering. These acts of cruelty, often dismissed as mere boyhood mischief, were early warning signs of a deeply disturbed psyche. A psyche that would later crave control and inflict pain on a scale unimaginable to most. As Rader grew older, these disturbing tendencies intensified. He became withdrawn, his fantasies growing more violent and perverse. He developed an unhealthy obsession with bondage and sadomasochism, themes that would later feature prominently in his crimes. His inner world became a breeding ground for the monster he would become, a monster hidden behind a carefully constructed facade of normalcy. The BTK killer's reign of terror began in 1974. His first victims, the Otero family, were chosen seemingly at random. Joseph and Julie Otero and 2 of their children, Josephine and Joseph Jr., were brutally murdered in their own home. The community was shaken to its core, the safe haven of their homes suddenly violated. 4 years later, Catherine Bright became BTK's next victim, her murder bearing the same chilling hallmarks. He bound, tortured, and strangled her, leaving behind a city gripped by fear. Shirley Vian, Nancy Fox, and Vicki Weggerl followed, their lives brutally cut short by a shadow lurking in the night. Each victim was a devastating loss, leaving families shattered and a community on edge. Maureen Hedge, a grandmother known for her kindness, became his 9th victim in 1985. Her murder, particularly brutal even by BTK's standards, intensified the pressure on the police. The city lived in fear, the unseen specter of the BTK killer hanging over them. BTK, it stood for Bind, Torture, Kill. This chilling acronym, revealed in letters Rader sent to the police and local media, reflected his modus operandi and the perverse pleasure he derived from his crimes. He meticulously planned each murder, often stalking his victims for weeks, learning their routines, their vulnerabilities. His letters were filled with chilling details of the murders, descriptions of his methods, and taunts directed at the police and the media. He craved notoriety, reveled in the fear he instilled, and the attention his crimes garnered. He fancied himself a puppet master, controlling the narrative, keeping himself at the center of the story. He sent photographs of the crime scenes, gruesome trophies of his handiwork. He included poems and puzzles, challenging the authorities, relishing the game he was playing. The letters provided a disturbing window into the mind of a killer, a mind consumed by darkness, driven by a need for power and control. The Otero family murders, BTK's first, were a turning point in the case. The brutality of the crime, the murder of 2 young children, shook Wichita to its core. The police launched a massive investigation, determined to bring the perpetrator to justice. However, despite their best efforts, the case went cold. Leads dried up, and the killer vanished. Years turned into decades, and the memory of the Otero family murders faded into the background, overshadowed by new tragedies. But for the families of the victims, the pain remained fresh. The quest for justice never abandoned. The Otero murders, while a devastating blow to the community, also marked the beginning of a long and arduous journey for justice. A journey that would span decades and test the resolve of generations of law enforcement. For years, the BTK killer remained silent. The city of Wichita breathed a collective sigh of relief, hoping that the nightmare was finally over. But the fear lingered, a specter haunting the city's subconscious. The unsolved murders cast a long shadow, a constant reminder of the city's vulnerability. Then, in 1979, a letter surfaced, claiming responsibility for the unsolved murders of the Otero family, Catherine Bright and Shirley Vian. The letter, signed BTK, sent shockwaves through the community. The monster hadn't vanished. He had been lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to resurface. The letter, filled with chilling details only the killer could have known, confirmed the authorities' worst fears. The BTK killer was back, and the city of Wichita was once again plunged into a nightmare. The hunt for the killer resumed, but BTK, it seemed, was always one step ahead. In 2004, after 25 years of silence, BTK resurfaced. He sent a letter to the Wichita Eagle, reigniting the terror that had gripped the city for decades. The letter, containing photos of the crime scene of Vicky Wagerl, his 9th victim, and a chilling message, "The code is killing me," sent shockwaves through the community. The letter marked the beginning of a year-long cat-and-mouse game between BTK and the Wichita Police Department. He sent a series of taunting letters and packages, playing a deadly game, testing the limits of the investigation and the city's resilience. The letters were filled with riddles, puzzles, and demands for attention. He craved recognition, wanted the world to know his name, to acknowledge his power. The city of Wichita was once again held hostage by fear, the invisible hand of BTK tightening its grip. Taunting the hunters, the cat-and-mouse game. BTK's communication with the police and the media intensified, evolving into a macabre game. He sent cryptic messages, left clues at prearranged locations, and even inquired about the safety of communicating via floppy disks. He seemed to relish the attention, the fear he instilled, the power he held over an entire city. The police, desperate to end his reign of terror, walked a fine line between engaging with him to keep him talking and not feeding his dangerous ego. They responded to his messages, deciphered his riddles, hoping each interaction would bring them closer to his identity. The game was as frustrating as it was terrifying. BTK was meticulous, cunning, and seemed to be always one step ahead. He knew the city like the back of his hand, exploiting its vulnerabilities, using its fear as a weapon. BTK's need for control and his insatiable ego ultimately led to his downfall. In February 2005, he sent a message to the police, inquiring if it was safe to communicate via a floppy disk. He was assured it was, unaware that this digital breadcrumb would seal his fate. On February 16, 2005, he sent a purple floppy disk to a local television station, KSAS-TV. The disk, seemingly erased, contained a deleted message, Dennis, and a link to a file from the Christ Lutheran Church. This digital fingerprint led the police directly to Dennis Rader, president of the church council. The arrest of Dennis Rader sent shockwaves through Wichita. The man who had terrorized their city for decades was not a shadowy phantom, but a seemingly ordinary man living among them. The man behind the mask was a husband, a father, a pillar of the community. The realization was as chilling as it was unbelievable. On June 27, 2005, Dennis Rader stood in a Kansas courtroom and confessed to the murders of 10 innocent people. He recounted the chilling details of his crimes with a chilling detachment, his words sending shivers down the spines of those present. He was sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences, ensuring he would spend the rest of his days behind bars. The trial offered a glimpse into the mind of a monster, but it provided little solace to the families of the victims. Their loved ones were gone, their lives forever altered by Rader's heinous acts. The scars of his crimes ran deep, a constant reminder of the darkness that had visited their city. While Rader's capture brought a sense of closure, it did little to erase the pain and suffering he had inflicted. The community of Wichita was left to grapple with the aftermath, to rebuild their lives, and to find a way to heal from the wounds of the past. The BTK case remains one of the most chilling and baffling in American criminal history. The case continues to fascinate and horrify, a stark reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of normalcy. Dennis Rader, the man who was both a monster and a seemingly ordinary man, serves as a chilling reminder that evil can wear many masks. The case also highlights the devastating impact of such crimes on the victims' families and the community. The fear, the uncertainty, the loss of innocence. These are wounds that time may heal, but never fully erase. The legacy of BTK is a complex one, a mix of horror, fascination, and a sobering reminder of the capacity for evil that exists within humanity. It is a legacy that will continue to be studied, analyzed, and debated for years to come. The story of BTK is not just the story of a killer. It is the story of the victims, their families, and a community forever changed. It is a story of loss, grief, resilience, and the long and arduous journey for justice. It is a story that reminds us that even in the face of unimaginable darkness, the human spirit endures. It is a story that compels us to remember the victims, to honor their memories, and to continue the fight for justice and healing. The capture and imprisonment of Dennis Rader may have closed one chapter, but the story of BTK continues, a stark reminder of the enduring power of hope and resilience in the face of unimaginable tragedy. The victims will never be forgotten.